Welcome to Beyond HR, the podcast for people first leaders who know that HR is about more than checklists and compliance. I'm Paige, your co-host, and we will explore the real challenges shaping today's workplaces. From burnout and belonging to strategy and storytelling, we're bringing you honest conversations, practical insights, and a fresh take on what it means to lead with heart in the world of work. Before we dive into our episode, a quick shout out to Manpower for generously providing the space where we record Beyond HR. And here's a quick word from our launch sponsor.
If you're feeling stretched thin, juggling big changes, emotional labor, and communication breakdowns, you're not alone. Hi everyone, I'm Dan Kaplan, founder of Bring Disc to Life, an online community for aspiring leaders and HR professionals. We give you the strategies, tools, and encouragement to communicate in ways that increase your influence while lowering your stress. Using DISC, the 5 behaviors, and mindfulness, you'll learn to stay grounded, read minds, and frame your message to influence others. We have live workshops every month, group coaching to unpack tough situations, and tons of easy-to-use scripts, strategies, and resources that you can apply right away without adding more to your plate. So come refuel with a community that gets you and wants to help you speak your truth in a way that's heard. Join us at confidentcommunicator.com and click on community. That's confidentcommunicator.com. Lead yourself and others will follow.
Quick side note before we dive in, my co-host Paige could not be here for this episode. She was under the weather the day that we recorded, but by the time that you're hearing this release, we know that she'll be back and feeling great, and we look forward to having her on our future episodes. So, who is Dr. Julie? She's the founder and CEO of Radico Psychological and Consultation Services, where she helps women in helping professions break free from perfectionism, burnout, and moral injury. She spent over a decade in academic medicine, building programs, mentoring students, and challenging bias where it lives. She's also the co-author of You Will Get Through This, a mental health first aid kit, which is packed with real-world tools for building resilience. In our conversation, we dig into the connection between mental health and HR, from the challenges of supporting employee well-being while balancing the demands of the job, to why we need to normalize mental health conversations in the workplace. We also talk about creating cultures of safety, the importance of self-care, and empathy for HR professionals, as well as how younger generations are shifting the expectations of such in the work. This episode is packed with insights and heart, so let's jump right in with Dr. Julie Radico. So what typically we like to start out with is kind of asking our guests, one of our central questions in the startup is, at the core of who you are as a person, behind everything else, behind your job, what would you say fuels the passion for what you do, and how did you become who you are?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of my core pieces, and this is true to me, is that as you say that, I'm like, well, there's multiple, because we're all multifaceted.
Right.
One of the core pieces is that I love learning. So like I'm a nerd through and through. And I, throughout all of my journey of grad school and all of the stuff, my brain works in such a way that I listen to all the complicated jargon and then go, all right, what are they really saying? Like, what do I need to take away here? How would I explain this to somebody else? How would I make this like useful for someone else? And so a big core of how I process information and how I like to give information is part of my mission in some of the work that I do is to demystify things. So like to find the nuggets from information and to share them with other people. So like, it's great that I, could tell you, oh, somebody might have emotional dysregulation with this diagnosis. What does that mean? It might mean that like, when they get overwhelmed, it's hard for them to keep themselves calm, or, something might really, they might struggle with a self-soothing, like to find ways to take deep breaths to calm themselves. And so you could say emotional dysregulation and lose most of the people who are listening to you. Or you could say like, oh, ways to self-soothe and keep you calm. So that's a big part of who I am, is to go, okay, this is complicated, but it's not that complicated. Let's make it like accessible, which is part of why, and we might touch on this. I co-authored a book with two other mental health clinicians called "You Will Get Through This." I have a copy here.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah, and the heart of the book was to demystify complicated things into small, bite-sized layperson language. So that connects with your question 100%. Because I was just like, this needs to be accessible. Everybody needs to have good tools in their toolbox, and it doesn't have to be in like 15-letter words. You know, like it could be in simple information.
Yeah, and I can definitely appreciate that, because I know, even maybe not so much on the psychology side, but like just regular doctor side, like sometimes, you know, I've gone to doctors for myself, or gone to help somebody else translate or whatever, and it's like there's the way that they explain, you have acute blah blah blah, and it's like, what does that even mean? Okay, acute what is that? Help me understand so I can tell this person what it is. So I can definitely appreciate your mission to try to make things a lot more simpler for us common folk that, you know, have the clinical background to understand all the terminology. And that's one of the things that I appreciate. So I did check you out on YouTube. I know that you have a little YouTube channel as well, with a co-psychologist. You guys are peers?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's Dr. Stacey Gebion. She's another psychologist and coach. Yes.
Yeah, and I could appreciate for sure how you guys are addressing those, you know, mystifying high terminology, you know, concepts, and bringing them down to people's common language to understand that. So thank you for that. I think definitely a lot more clinicians should have that mentality and that mission to do that, because it makes the rest of us kind of feel normal for one, whatever normal means, but it makes us feel normal, and just be able to understand a little better and have a little understanding, because I'm definitely a firm believer that a lot of people are afraid of things they don't understand, or maybe can't grapple with, so being able to educate is definitely, you know, for sure appreciated. So thank you for that. Now, how did you end up where you're at as far as your, you know, professional journey? Like what prompted you to say, hey, I want to grow up and be in the psychology field?
So my journey, when you ask that question, my brain lights up in so many different ways. So I'm going to say a couple things. One is, I fortunately realized that I loved psychology by taking an AP psychology course in high school.
Oh, wow. Okay. That far back. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is the first class where like, I want to know more. And I was always interested, right? Again, nerd over here. But it was the first class that I was like, oh, I want you to tell me to study this. I want to take a test on this. And that luckily carried me through. For listeners, you don't need to know this, but you might already be familiar. If you get an undergrad degree in psychology, there's not much you can do with it. It kind of demands that you go on to get at least a master's or a doctoral degree. And so that was my journey. And I ended up working in, I pursued working in medical settings for about a decade. And part of why I did that before I transitioned 2 years ago into my own private practice was people show up to their primary care clinician. People show up to, get their annual checkup. Sometimes, not all the time.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is that there's this big push to have psychologists and mental health clinicians in primary care settings, because that's where people tend to show up. And there's statistics about, if your primary care clinician refers you to a therapist, to a psychologist, to whoever it may be, the rate of actually like you showing up after being referred is like 20 to 30%. It like drops drastically if you're going out into the community to find somebody. If you have a psychologist, therapist, somebody embedded in the primary care clinic where you're literally just going, oh, walk down the hall and see Dr. Radico, that increases the rates that people actually go, because it takes away the stigma. It normalizes like your primary care clinician who's known you since you were a child, trust this person. And it also, we could talk about in the weeds for a long time about all the nuances of this, but it also means that all of your care clinicians are working on a team to support you. So like it's not, the messaging from the psychologist going back to your primary care clinician gets lost somehow and they never get updates, or like it's the same medical system. It's the same EMR, like the electronic medical record. So all that breaks down a lot of barriers. And so that spoke to me. I also love to teach. And so I loved teaching medical residents all the behavioral health information that they needed. I won't say all, but like a lot of the behavioral health information that they needed. Again, in this vein of like demystifying things for people. And then I started my private practice to continue some of that work through consulting, but also supporting professional women in coaching and therapy services and doing like speaking. One of the things that I speak on now is helping people recognize and manage unhelpful thoughts, like the cognitive distortions. That's the jargon, y'all.
Yeah.
Unhelpful thoughts that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, when you asked that question, I was like, oh no, well, my brain's lit up in so many ways, so I'm just going to tell you lots of things.
We can take it whichever way you want. Yeah. No, perfectly. I think it's definitely a good answer, and like I said, we can take it whichever route spirit takes us. We're good for that. So, so one of the things that I've learned, which sounds like common sense, but one of the things that I've learned through self-study and internalization and things like that is that your mind is kind of the first thing that dictates how your body reacts to things around it, and the power of mind over body kind of thing. Why is it that it's so much easier to go to a physical doctor than a mind doctor?
There is a lot of stigma that luckily is getting better. I think with each generation, the stigma is lessening more and more. It's still there, that if you need to go see a mind doctor, that means there's something wrong with you. You're quote unquote crazy or not normal. And the truth of the matter is that you very insightfully are bringing up one of the sort of models that is often used by people who work in primary care, or like psychologists who are really thoughtful about the interplay of physical health and mental health, is what's called the biopsychosocial model. So it's the biological impacting the mental, impacting the social. And there's also models like the biopsychosocial spiritual model. All this to say that you are 100% correct that, especially in this model, everything's connected. And I talk about this when I talk about unhelpful thoughts to people. You might stub your toe, which is a physical experience that you've had, and you're going to have an automatic thought about that. You're going to like stub your toe, and then immediately you're going to have a thought like, oh, that's awful. And then you might right away feel like upset, annoyed.
Right.
And then that like it impacts your behavior. So you might then like sit on the ground and like hug your toe, or, like
throw a couple cuss words here and there.
Yes, you got it. And so all of that's connected, right? So like your thoughts, your feelings, like your behaviors, like your physiological feelings, all of that is connected. And somehow we've told ourselves this story over time that like the mental part of it, which is, you're right, it's kind of like a big base of how we function in the world, how you view the world, is like this weird, we can't understand it. If something's wrong with it, it's terrible and you should be ashamed. And it's just like the stigma is, I think, a big part of why people, it's getting better now, but why people say, oh, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with you. I'll pause after this comment. To this point, people have this question of, oh, why are more people now getting diagnosed with autism, like that they're autistic?
Yeah.
It happened in the past. People were getting more and more diagnosed with bipolar. People were getting more and more diagnosed with ADHD. And there's this whole debate of, well, is there something wrong with what's happening in the world now? Are we poisoning ourselves in some way? And then there's these questions of, or are we better at talking about the mind stuff? Do we have better screening tools? Are people more willing to not just hide that family member, but to say, oh, hey, this is a fully fledged human person that could benefit from support and help and can live a really fulfilled life if we don't just like push them into the back room and try to like hide, what's going on. And so I think being aware of it is getting better. Like the fact that we all have mental health,
Right.
just as a human being, you have mental health,
Right.
whether
Right.
it's good, bad, neutral, like you have mental health. And needing to take care of that is so important. Because if you don't, there's also research that talks about even for thinking about breast cancer wound healing. So
Mm.
after treatments for breast cancer, and that they've done studies where they've looked at the rates of healing for individuals who were depressed versus individuals who were not depressed or had treatment for depression.
Mm.
And depression slowed wound healing.
Mm.
Like it's just so a part of us. You can't take away the fact that your mental health and how you view the world. And
Oh, I think I lost you there.
oh, yep, I
Yep.
froze. I was looking. I was like, no, did I lose internet? Ah, I don't know where I froze at. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're explaining about the whole concept of like the importance of mental health and how it is becoming more nuanced in our society, and are coming out of that, but people still have a little bit of disconnect between understanding that that is such a pivotal important part to everything else, and the connection of the trifecta, I guess is the better phrase. But and it's crazy because even within how do I say this? So I guess let me backtrack for a second. So my own personal journey has been one of the last couple of years for sure, aggressively, of forcing myself to look at my own like inner wounds and inner healing, and looking at aspects of my day-to-day life that may need a stronger plan of attack of that healing process. And one of the things that I've struggled with and balanced out with has been, how do I create space for myself to heal the things that I need to heal, while I'm also absorbing all the energy from those around me that are looking to me for healing, even though it's not really my responsibility, but they're still kind of looking for someone to kind of guide them, or more venting than guiding, because again, I'm not an expert on healing in any way, shape, or form. So and I'm very, very self-aware of that. But at the same time, it's one of those things where I hold this role as an HR person, where I'm tasked with managing performance, but also somehow managing the people behind the performance. And I've developed myself within the last couple of years to understand that you're not going to truly get the most out of an employee, for example, if that employee is coming from a place of brokenness and lack of energy and lack of people around them that believe in them. So it's been a very challenging dual thing to address or try to balance out, because I understand that business has to run, but also if the people that run the business aren't at their optimal self, then where does that leave the person, which for me, I'm not a clinical empath for all the definitions that word may come with, but I tend to have, I feel like, a higher level of empathy towards people that I kind of carry on their burden sometimes. And there's times that I come out of work drained, like somebody literally just whacked the crap out of me all day long with a stick, and then I'm like, oh my god, I come home and I talk to my wife, and I'm like, I need like 5 minutes to decompress, because like I seriously feel like I don't have anything to give right now to you and our kids and things like that. And I feel like that's where the term burnout comes out of. I feel like it always starts, or it starts, not always, it starts within the mind first, and then eventually your body starts reacting to that, where maybe I know for a while there, my sleeping patterns weren't as good as it could be. I felt, even now, like I constantly feel tired. So understanding that, have you experienced or seen, or what's been your interaction with like professionals in the workplace in high emotionally demanding roles? And what has been your exposure to it, and how do you walk from somebody through, all right, these are the things to think about as you're experiencing these things?
Yeah, you brought up a lot of great points for this question. So I have worked alongside and been one of the people in high pressured jobs, working alongside physicians and people who are in leadership roles. I also coach professional women who are in leadership roles and in high demanding jobs, whether they're taking care of their own clients, their own patients. And you bring up a really fantastic point related to how to make sure that you are taking care of your own needs so that you can take care of others. And similarly, how to set boundaries around that, to know when it's important and you need to serve what you want to do, like have empathy for other people and to hold their stuff. This is an analogy I use. So as a psychologist, a coach, my job is to hold other people's stuff for a period of time, right? So if somebody came to you and was like, Will, I'm struggling, you wouldn't want to be like, okay, well, I know that's hard, whatever.
Yeah.
You're going to meet them where they're at and be like, yeah, that sucks. Like, let's talk about it. How can I support you? What, like what's going on? It's important for people, especially like in HR, where that's a big part of your role and you're caught in all this nuanced space, to be able to, and you can feel free to use my image, to say, okay, somebody is coming to me with a need, colleague, person I'm helping at work, kids, family. I am purposely okay with putting out my hands to hold your stuff along with you right now. I can't hold all of it and I'm not going to take it from you, but I'm happy to, as you put out your hands as the person asking for help, that I'm going to come alongside and maybe like scoop my hands under yours and help you hold that for while we're talking, while we're working together. And then this is the key, to have a practice where you are then saying, okay, well, our time is up for now, or we're going to continue this conversation later, whatever it might be, to purposefully, and feel free to use my image, say, okay, I'm either going to hand this all back to you, or I'm going to take my hands and put the stuff down, on the table in front of me, put it in a box, whatever image works for you, but purposefully knowing that you're engaged with that person, you care about them, you're there with them while you're there with them. And then you need to, for your own health, put that stuff down. You can't hold the weight of the world and then feel like you're going to take care of yourself. Because to be able to have the strength to hold other people's stuff along with them, you need to be like exercising your muscles, right? You might do a lot of different ways. You might do self-care like deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, mindfulness practice. You might have routines where you turn off your brain. This is one of my go-tos. Is I love to sing. I love Broadway. I love musicals, but I just love music in general. It's how I was raised.
Awesome.
And if I'm at the end of the day and I'm like, I need to just turn off my brain for a moment, I need to like switch gears, reset, I'll pick a random type of music and I will rock out, sing along at the top of my lungs, dance around, whatever it might be, but to reset, to say, okay, yep, nope, I put that stuff down and I really put it down because I'm like all over and I can't hold it. I'm not holding it right now. Like I need to do something for me so that I can show up in other spaces and really like invest my time and my energy. But the take home message from all this, I hope listeners take, is like, it is so valid that you can't hold everybody's stuff all the time. You can't solve everyone's problems. If people come to you and say, you have to solve my problem 100% and completely, that is not a reasonable ask. You can help, you can be a component of that, you can support, but you are not the be all end all for problem solvers for anybody, including yourself. That's why we have support systems. That's why we have, therapists and coaches and things like that. Like, asking for support is part of the strategy to like strengthen your hands, but you need to be able to put it down and I would encourage y'all to have an image of how you put it down, because you want to really be sure that you're not putting all that stuff in like your backpack and carrying it with you, because it's just going to weigh you down.
Yeah. And I mean, it can definitely be hard. I know from my experience, like we care a lot about our jobs, and I might be generalizing, but I know for the most part, every HR person that I've met personally really care about our jobs and really care about our people. And at times, sometimes to the point that you might get accused about caring too much for people and not about the business, and then you have to figure out a way of redefining that narrative. But one of the things that I have found for myself has been that if I don't make the priority to find that time, time flies so quickly. And I think more recently I've been able to kind of sort of reset that mindset a little bit. Because, I mean, HR work is 24/7. I mean, especially when you're at certain levels of HR where you're either overseeing facilities or multiple facilities at a time. Sometimes you're like the specialist in the employee relations side where you're almost like an on-call kind of thing. I give kudos to you guys in your profession because I know part-time, so I feel like sometimes HR people are part-time therapists, not clinically certified, and somehow have to manage all that stuff. And sometimes I cross my fingers that I give the right advice to somebody, you know, not knowing that I need to be like, oh, you know, this is not meant as any medical advice or any medical, you know, things that you should do. But from my experience, I can only tell you that this is something that I would do if I was in your shoes. But definitely, it takes a lot of intentional, forceful at times. Hey, I need to set out 5 minutes of my day or 10 minutes of my day or early in the morning before I go in to be able to create some kind of like you're saying earlier, ritual or grounding session or something to give that space to yourself. But it's hard sometimes because you get distracted by so many things. And so as far as like from an HR perspective, because obviously this podcast is for everyone, but we do want to, you know, give some practical tools and practical things that HR folks that are listening could do. What would that look like in your mind for an HR person who is, let's say, a department of one, they're a mid-level HR person trying to figure out the navigation between making sure that the company objectives are being carried out, but also caring about the people behind it, and how could they best speak to those operational leaders to say, hey, we understand that there's a productivity that has to be met, but these are the things that are happening behind the scenes, and that may not understand that, maybe have the stigmas, or may just not comprehend the aspect of the humanity behind the workplaces.
Yeah. So two thoughts are coming to mind. One, I want to join very quickly with what you had said in trying to find time to prioritize, like taking care of yourself. One of the things I encourage people to do is schedule time on your calendar for self-care. And that could be 5 minutes, that could be an hour, that could be whatever it looks like, but schedule it and treat it like it's an unmovable appointment. Like you wouldn't, unless there's like, you know, I don't know,
an
some
emergency,
big
yeah.
emergency, like you're not going to reschedule your, I don't know, annual appointment with your primary care physician, like, or you're not going to reschedule like, oh, this is for my kids, whatever event, like this is important to me. I need to be like, treat your self-care time in the same way. And then to your question, there's no perfect words. So I'm hearing you say that the trying to communicate the challenges and the realities that people are people and they have their real lives and they have their real struggles, and then they come to work, and what's asked of you in HR is to try to help them be as productive as possible and improve their performance, and but also like you can't make somebody do something that they're not able to do or willing to do. And to be able to compassionately relay to leaders that we got to meet people where they're at. Two thoughts come to mind. One is talking to leaders about changing the system versus trying to change the people in the system, and talking to the leaders related to that about moral injury. So moral injury is there, you can read papers about it. It is this idea that, or this concept, that we might tell people in roles, their professional roles, that we really value them. And a great example of this is like, remember during COVID times when people would go out in the streets and like bang pots and pans for the medical responders? Like that is we value you. We're really important. And then what was happening is these medical responders were going to work with no supplies, no N95s, no, like they were literally covering themselves in trash bags to try to treat people. That's moral injury. We value you and what we say, but we're not actually treating you that way. Oh, so talking to leaders, because this happens in every system. I imagine every listener here is probably like, yeah, there's some of that in our system because it's rampant. So I would reflect to leaders systemically, what can you change? Like, what are the things that, so we tell people to take vacation, but then there's sort of this penalty when they do. Or we tell people to take paternal leave, but then there's this hidden penalty when they do. Can we mandate it? Can we make it so that like you get some sort of penalty if you don't take your vacation time? Like to normalize in the system doing things that would actually help people's mental, physical well-being and to call out and to try to help leaders name, and figure out what are the things that we're doing that really are like, yeah, we value you. We want you to take time, but we're going to schedule meetings at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
Then those are
Like
very, very common.
right.
Yeah.
That's moral injury. We value your time. We want you to have a lot of well-being and we don't want you to burn out, but we're going to have all these meetings that basically mean you have to work 12 hours a day, even though you're supposed to work 9 or 8 or whatever it is. Like that's moral injury. So really trying to help people who are high up in the systems who can actually change make these big impacts to help them structure, incentivize really sticking to don't respond to emails when you're not like when you're off, don't reinforce responding to email. Say, okay, I will not respond to email Saturday and Sunday if that's your weekend. Trying to help people change systems because systems are what really keep people feeling stuck in the burnout, stuck in the struggle. Yes, we all have our individual struggle stuff that leaks through when we come to work and if it's not well managed. Another strategy might be if you have an EAP in your system, like an employee assistance program, what about everybody has a mandated EAP appointment? It's just auto scheduled for them once a year. They have to opt out of that appointment, but it's during work time, it's scheduled for them, and they can choose to opt out, but it's normalized that you would go to your EAP and you would have a well visit and maybe 5, 6, 7, like whatever your package is, but to normalize that the things that we say we want you to do for your wellness are actually things that we're going to like mandate you to do for your wellness that you can opt out of, but like you need to take your vacation time. You need to go to the EAP. You need to like not answer emails on the weekends, like changing the structure. That's what if I could get a bunch of leaders, like C-suite people in a room, I'd be like, all right, y'all, let's actually change some systemic issues here to help people actually know that we want them to be well.
Yeah, and the crazy part is, it doesn't really seem like it's that much rocket science. Like it's just a matter of getting someone together. And I know, especially like older companies that are kind of, this is the way we've always done it. Don't rock the boat too much. It's definitely a challenge trying to figure out what the best way of addressing that. To your point, and it's interesting that you actually brought that up. I hadn't thought about that. That subconsciously we're delivering a separate message from the things that we're trying to consciously accomplish. And it's almost like we're talking from both sides of our mouths, and it's definitely, again, it goes back to my point earlier where there's things that are obvious but you don't think about it until somebody points them out. Now, in your mind, what do you think is, I always ask questions but then I think about the background. So backtracking, so one of my personal theses that I've kind of held on to this year has been, I firmly believe, and I'm in a space now that I believe that HR as a profession has a sacred duty to be spiritual healers of our workplace. And a lot of spiritual things happen starting with their mind and our mindset and how we see things and how we, and this is not religion, but this is just, our spiritual wholeness of who we are as individuals. And one of the things that it's very challenging, obviously we can't control people around us, and I'm fully aware of that, and being able to find ways of allowing people the safe space to open up their minds and heart to understand that is so challenging. And I'm sure we can probably talk about childhood traumas forever and general traumas and all these things that create those narratives of either we're not allowing ourselves to flourish, either because we feel like we're not worthy of it, or because the systems around us make us feel like we don't have a strong enough voice. So in your perspective and in your experience, how do you feel leadership can help and play into reducing stress and preventing burnout amongst the employees, especially at the HR level that we're in? And how can those of us that are in the space that we can see the healing that has to happen create a model or a platform to allow those around us to be able to think and behave that way?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the thoughts that comes to mind is normalizing. So even just the fact that you are talking about this and normalizing that mental health is important, your spiritual awareness of yourself, whatever that might mean, like faith wise, spiritually. Like I think of when you said that, I was like, oh, like mindfulness.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Talking about those things, norming the having those conversations is key. Uh, so if I come into your workspace and I say, "Oh yeah, I just talked to my therapist," and the response that the culture is, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" Like
yeah,
that is going to shut me down, and then
mm,
I'm going to know that, oh, I don't bring that up. I shouldn't bring that up. If HR can be helpful in creating this culture of, oh, when I come in and I say, I just talked to my therapist and I hear from HR, I hear from the people around me, like that it's normed of, oh, how'd it go? I hope you're doing okay. Or, like, oh, that's awesome. I have my appointment next week, like
yeah,
just
yeah,
normalizing that like everybody could benefit from therapy. Everybody
hmm
could benefit from spiritual like reflections. And again, I think about that as mindfulness. And mindfulness is being paying attention in the moment on purpose and non-judgmentally. So to make this concrete, if you were like, Julie, what's a strategy that you think HR people should use in the moment to help, prevent burnout? What about every time before you like talk to somebody as you're sitting in front of them or, on a virtual call, you said, and you normed it. You own that you're norming this. Hey, I have this practice knowing that we get really stressed and we come into these meetings and it's a whole bunch of stress and there's all this stuff going through our minds. I have a practice of doing mindfulness for 30 seconds. So if you're okay with following along with me, I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath in through your nose, move the air to your belly, breathe out through your mouth, and then notice without judging what's one thing you see, what's one thing you hear, one thing that you physically feel. Like notice your feet on the floor, your legs on the chair, your shirt on your shoulders. What's one thing that you taste? And what's one thing you smell? And they don't have to be sharing that with you. They can if they want, but just taking a moment to pay attention to the things that our brain is filtering out because we're so stressed, to ground ourselves, like you were saying, like that. I have a colleague that does that, and I was actually in a meeting with them last night, and they were like, "Can we take a minute?" And we all did mindfulness, and then he went around and he was like, "Okay, what did everybody notice?" And I was like, "Oh, I noticed my air conditioning clicking on, and it was like cooling my feet, and it was really nice." But
yeah,
if you would have asked me the hour before when I was just go go go, did I notice the air conditioner? I
hmm
sure didn't, because we're just all up in our space. So long story short, like norm taking those pauses for your health to check in with yourself. Did you notice that your shoulders were up here and your jaw was clenched and like, okay, well, let your shoulders loose and unclench your jaw. Those small moments of norming the check-in and actually checking in, I mean, those create a culture where when somebody walks in and says, "Oh, I just came from therapy," they'd be like, "Oh, cool. I
cool,
hope it's
yeah.
helpful." Like, like you're walking the walk.
Yeah, and I feel like with this kind of topic, as far as like when it comes to mindfulness and self awareness, like I have had that interaction with folks that are you can tell that, well, it's easy to be in a space in life where you have time to do that,
Mm.
and I always kind of think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and things that mindfulness is on the upper end of that, echelon. And if your basic needs aren't met, then it's hard to be able to even have this headspace for that. And unfortunately, a lot of manufacturing environments are kind of based that way, because we do have folks that are living paycheck to paycheck, or they're struggling, with relationships at home, or and that could be all kinds of relationships, or sometimes layered up on top of each other. If you were giving me advice as an HR professional, say this is how probably in those scenarios, because they might not be at the level that they're open, or their inner self is open for that. How can we support those kind of employees and ourselves amongst each other when our physical needs aren't even met to a space that we can be already at that vibration?
Yeah. So safety is important, and it's a really basic need, kind of as you're talking about supporting people in helping them feel safe. So asking them in whatever language you feel comfortable with, but checking in, and maybe you do this in one-on-one safe places, you do this in surveys, you gather data, you do 360, whatever it might be, but you're trying to find out what are the things, the people, places, think, like what is adding to their feelings of safety when they come to work or in their home life. If that's something that's relevant, I might stick to work because you're talking about work. And what are the things that are chipping away at their safety? And then again, going back to, if you find out over multiple conversations or over a survey or over, and there's a danger with surveying and not doing anything about it. And that's some of the feedback that we've learned over the years is like, if you ask people for feedback and then you go, great, thanks so much for that feedback, we're not going to do anything with it. Like that. Yeah, that's moral injury, right? Yeah, that's okay. Well, I'm not filling out this stupid survey because you're never doing anything. So like being really mindful to impact how you can, like there might be small acts of safety that could be implemented that would have a big impact on the people in the workspace. Is it knowing when you're having conversations, you're creating safety by telling them the limits of the confidentiality. So basically you're saying like, here's how this conversation might go, and here's who I would share it with or not. That creates safety. So they would know if they can share and what they can share. Creating safety around, okay, so if you have all different types of people working in your business and some of them don't feel safe using rooms or facilities or at certain times of day, like there's not enough light in the parking lot. That was actually an issue that we had at one of the clinics back when I, worked in my previous job. And that's a safety issue. Well, you need me to work until sometimes 7, 8 o'clock, but then I have to walk to my car in the dark. I don't feel safe doing that. Like that was complaints that were heard, and they got lights. They fixed it, right? So like addressing, I think there's so many levels of safety that you can think about. And yes, the stuff that people bring from home is going to leak in their experiences. The trauma that they've experienced is going to have their radar be like scanning what they're viewing and what they're experiencing in ways that they're scanning for risks to their safety. They might be hyper vigilant or might avoid things that make them feel really uncomfortable that another person might be like, that's fine. So, I mean, the most important thing to do is to find out what the risk factors are for the people that you're working with, and to actually, and maybe this is going back to the people high up, saying, here are the things that we are hearing. We need to do X, Y, and Z about some of this stuff. Because it's not just 1 or 2 people, it's like a bunch of people. This is a valid issue. What can we do about it? How can we change the culture in a way that normalizes safety? So like not saying, oh, if you need to, you can use this extra room that makes some people feel safe. So for example, there's often an issue with people not having places to pump for breast milk. And so that was a mission at the hospital system I used to work with. There was a whole policy that created from my department. and got implemented around the whole hospital system, that then there were places, and it was normed that these places would be actively used. So it wasn't just like, oh, okay, you're the one weird person that's actually going to go use that. No, it was like there's a whole culture shift here. So basically what I'm saying is finding out, and doing something actionable about what the safety risks are, um, because you don't want to morally injure people by surveying them and not doing anything.
Right.
But also then norming it, saying, okay, well, we're closing that other space that people would usually go to, or being like, we're making this new safe space the norm, so that people, again, basically would have to try to opt out of the new culture, the healthier culture, which they might, but you want them to default be sent to the EAP, like to have an appointment waiting for them for everybody. It's just a norm versus oh, okay, if you need to go, you can go. You're the one person. Like this should
Yeah.
feel weird for you. Like no. Like it's safe. Go talk to people. So I said a lot of things, but it's a really important, thoughtful topic.
Yeah, it's funny though because I know I worked for companies where they unless you opt out of 401k, you're automatically enrolled in 401k.
Mm.
So it's interesting to hear you kind of make the same suggestion for a mental health type of program, either through an EAP or whatever service the employer might be using, to to be if you don't want it, then we're gonna be calling you every other month saying, hey, when are you gonna come meet with us, or when are we gonna go on a walk or go outside. That's kind of interesting. Now, in your perspective, as the workplaces continue to evolve and we keep on pushing forward and to 2026 and beyond, what do you believe to be the next big shift in how organizations either must approach mental health and wellness, or are going to be forced to approach mental health and wellness, or I'm sorry, mental health and wellness?
Yeah.
Well, and the caveat to that question too is the fact that I know that as generations of start coming into the workforce, and we already have it happening in the HR world. We already have the whole generational battle of what is expected of people. Younger generations come in wanting a little more freedom and flexibility, where older generations, I lose count how many times I've heard. Back in the day, I would just to come to work and I would bleed the company and I would do this and I just did what I was supposed to do without asking any questions, where that's not so much the mentality anymore. So from our perspective, it's already happening, but I feel like as the younger ones keep on whatever generation next name is going to be, starts entering the workforce, it's going to be even more of that. And as the older generations start, retiring and weeding out, back to the question, like, what do you see as that evolution, what that looks like, and what's something that companies are going to have to be able to wrap their head around?
Yeah. It's a fantastic question. My perspective is valuing individual voices is going to become even more important. And you mentioned it, and I was like, you stole the words from me. Flexibility is going to be key. So, I mean, I'm an elder millennial. I will claim my.
I'm there with
my,
you. I'm there with you.
so, but even in my older part of the generation, flexibility is huge. Being able to really value and try to walk that like work-life balance. We use those phrases. People are like, I need to be able to work from home sometimes. I need to be able to come into work late or leave early to get my kid to this appointment or for me to get to this appointment. I don't want to work in places that don't give me any flexibility. So I have friends that do 4 10-hour days and they're like, I could never go back to 5 days a week. Like being able to meet people where they are, I think is going to be, because that goes to that individualistic sort of, like, I think that's going to be so critical. Similarly, the younger generations are more and more open to talking about mental health, talking about their feelings, talking about advocating for themselves and for their colleagues. That is really emphasizing the importance of creating a culture where you're not just talking it, you're walking the walk of, yeah. Like, so if you were to say to, somebody who is from a younger generation, oh yeah, we really value work-life balance. So you're going to work 80 hours a week and you're never going to actually take your vacation days, and they're likely going to walk. They're going to be like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not made for the capitalistic machine. I am made to enjoy life and to work and to earn money, but also to like have time to spend the money. And so I think that's going to be just even more important. And I'm really curious to see what it looks like in 20 years, because that's a positive influence. It feels hard and it feels frustrating, especially when you have this like beautiful melting pot of mixture of ages. And you're
Yeah.
talking about, like people from, you're somebody in there who's 25 working with somebody who's 65.
Mm-hmm.
That's, there's a lot of difference there, but there's also a lot of similarity that they both probably want to spend time with their families.
Yeah.
They both want time to enjoy the money that they're earning. They both want to have healthcare coverage and be able to use that. Like, I think that different generations, and we talk too much about like blanket kind of like, oh, millennials are this.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, like, for grain of salt, for what it's worth, there are some differences, just because like you and I, it sounds like, grew up where I had a typewriter when I was in fourth grade. And then like I lived through the time of like fifth grade, we got AOL.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
And the
like
wonderful
high
beep of
school.
death. The
Yeah, exactly. Like,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But then I had a cell phone, and then I had an iPhone, and then I had like, I was just like, we have lived through a time where things have changed so fast.
Yeah.
Like it has been, but we were analog. We went outside and played, and people talk about like kids these days don't. They do, but they also do have greater access to information than we ever did. We had to like go look it up in an encyclopedia, and there was a little tiny paragraph, and you maybe
Yeah.
got what you needed. Like I remember those days.
I still remember having to pull out a map to get somewhere and trying to figure out what route to
Yes,
take and memorizing it before you got there.
100%. Yes,
And you had
yes.
to write things down on a piece
So
of paper. Make a left at this road, and it's 5 miles down. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows?
yes, my mom, a wonderful human being, she always had this thing, it just made me think of this, where she would never turn around when she got lost. She's like, no, you just keep going and you'll figure it out. And like that's the mentality I grew up with. And then now it's like, if my GPS isn't telling me like where to go, I don't know where to go. I'm like, just keep, like, clearly that road's probably gonna come to that road. Like,
She had
give it
her,
a try.
she had her own internal recalculating mode.
Yes, and I mean we got places,
Yeah,
so
yeah. If anything else, to give
yeah,
you more scenic to see, the scenic route, as I
exactly.
always tell my kids.
100%. That's one of my favorite things, is where you end up taking a wrong thing and you come out somewhere and you go, oh, that's where those people come from. I love it so
Yep, yep.
much.
Or that's where that road leads. I didn't realize it came out to this side. Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I know I could talk to you forever. Honestly, there's so many different things that are running through my head, but I obviously want to be cognizant of time. But, so based on the conversation that we had today, if there is one or two things that you want to be like, hey, if you didn't, as a listener, listen to catch anything on this conversation, and what would be the one or two most powerful takeaways that you would say? This is, if you didn't hear anything else, this is what I want you to understand or hear or listen to.
Yeah. And it's actually something that we didn't explicitly touch on. The thing that I want people, everybody, to be aware of and to identify for themselves and use that as their compass to drive what they do professionally, personally, their values.
Hmm.
So you can search engine right now as you're listening, values list
Hmm.
of values, and you're going to get lists that have like 200 words on them, and they might be things like family, achievement, spirituality, like jogging, like lots of stuff will come up on values lists. The goal is that I would have for people is to narrow down your values to a top 5. If you need a top 10, fine. Try to prioritize.
Yeah.
I have a values list,
Hmm.
and every now and then probably like every 2 months or so, I open it up because I have it saved, electronically. I'll
Yeah.
open it up and I'll look and I'll say, okay, all the things I've been doing this month or the past 2 months, how do they align with my values?
Mm.
And I do a check-in. So if you let's just make it up and say that you value achievement, it's in your top five, then when opportunities come to you, you want to weigh like, okay, how does achieving this thing right now mesh with my other values? If another value is like enjoying my time with my family, like, okay, how do I balance those things? But also, how do I know that I'm making space for that? If I really value achievement, then like, okay, if an opportunity just came up at work and I was thinking no, but you know what? I might be able to go for that. And I think it would give me a lot of energy and help me really feel like there's this good sense of purpose in what I'm doing every day. Maybe I will go for that.
Mm.
Like check in, like identify your values and check in with them regularly as your guidepost, your compass for what you're doing in all areas of your life. I find that sometimes when we feel lost or we feel like we don't know what we're doing or we're not sure what our next step should be or how do we even approach like a disagreement, if you know that you value connection with other people, then be aware of that, that you want to come away from that conversation maintaining that connection.
Mm.
Or that you know that that person might not be your person, but you have other connections that can help make you feel like you've got a good foundation so that you're not overvaluing the conversation or stressing about it too much. Like, just values are super important and helpful in how we go about navigating the decisions we make, what we choose to spend our energy on, and what we want to do with our lives.
Mm. And it's so interesting, the connection, at least as I see it, that the connection to burnout and loss of passion, to not just like
Mm.
not aligning with your values, but not even knowing what those are.
Yeah.
Because to your point, like, I guess that's step one, is making a point of figuring out what those are. Because a lot of times, like for myself, and I always tell people this, like I bumped into HR by accident. I didn't go to school saying, "Oh, I want to grow up and be a human resources professional," you know. Um, but once you jumped into the field, and I'm assuming any field that has to do with human interaction, if it's not something that you meant to do or you actually sought out to do, it's so easy to just coast, kind of like you're floating in the ocean, and the day-to-day functions of the job and everything that you're doing. It's almost like you get to that pivotal space in your career or in your life where you're like, you know what, why am I doing this, you know,
Mhm.
and am I doing this for the right reasons, or
Mm.
am I just stepping into this role because I this is what I know, not realizing that
Yeah.
this is not in fact what lights up your soul. Because that's the other aspect of what we want to address with our podcast too, is the fact that maybe having that self-reflection that maybe HR isn't what you were meant to be or what you were called to be. It just so happens that you were in that space and time that you filled that role because you were needed to, but now you're transcending that level of who you are. um it starts with understanding what your values are. It starts with understanding who you want to be, and what you foresee yourself. So thank you so much for bringing that up, because I think we would be doing a disservice not addressing that aspect of it for sure, and making sure that our listeners are doing some, I could call it aggressive inspection of ourselves, and looking for those values that, you know, what are they first of all, and how can they align? Because I firmly believe that once you lose your passion, that means that there's a disconnect between who you are as a person and what you're doing day to day, and it's not feeding each other. So definitely thank you so much for that. I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's something that didn't pop in my mind throughout our conversation, because I. I'm self or what is it called, self diagnosed ADHD, so I tend to go all over the place. But definitely, thank you.
Before we wrap up, we want to give a special thank you to two of our sponsors. First, we'd like to once again thank our launch sponsor, the Bring Disc to Life community at confidentcommunicator.com, for their generous support. We also want to thank one of our founding supporter sponsors, Chain Solutions. They have believed in the Beyond HR podcast since day one, and we are proud to have them alongside us. Chain Solutions has been a trusted name and background screening for just over 20 years. They are accredited, use secure mobile first technology, and offer incredible responsive support with an average response time of just 18 minutes. If you're in need of a background screening partner who gets it right, fast and secure, Chain Solutions is one to know. And just for our listeners, they are waiving their usual $250 setup fee. Just mention you heard about them on the Beyond HR podcast. Thanks again to Chain Solutions for being a part of our journey.
So in regards to you, I definitely want to give you an opportunity to talk a little more about yourself before we wrap up our conversation. But where can people find you if they're interested in talking about you? What kind of things do you have going on or coming up? I know that you have 2 books that you've written or co-written, or one.
I have one book that I've co-written. I actually have another that was with a publisher right now, but they're deciding if they want to write
Okay,
it. So
okay.
you may be manifesting that for me.
I
and
got you.
will
I
take
got
it.
your
I'll take
back. Yes, yes, yes. Manifestation. We're all about that too. So, awesome. So, tell us a little bit more about the book. I know we touched very briefly in the beginning of the conversation, but tell us about the
Yeah.
book. Where can people find it? Give us kind of a little synopsis of it, and then as well anything else that you got going on, and then how can people find you?
Yeah, yeah. So I brought a visual aid. I love visual aids. I also, brought my cat the whole time.
Yes,
She
yes, I
was,
saw it back there. Yeah.
I was like, oh, you know what? I love when I watch podcasts and there's like an animal that I track around. So I was like, people are probably loving her. She does what she wants, and I fully support it.
Perfectly.
But so the book is You Will Get Through This. It's a mental health toolkit. I co-wrote it with 2 amazing mental health clinicians, Charity O'Reilly and Nicole Halverson. The reasoning behind the book was working in primary care as I did in the past. I would interact with patients who would come to me and say, oh yeah, I waited 2 months for my appointment, or I vacillated whether or not I wanted to come talk to a therapist or, see a psychologist, any of that. And I looked on TikTok and I went on social media and I did a quick internet search and I think I have this, or I started doing this because that's what TikTok told me to do. And there was actually a recent analysis that came out, I think it was on the New York Times, of a big compendium of videos on TikTok related to, I'm pretty sure it was ADHD. And they found that 50% of those videos were inaccurate
Oh wow.
to like the diagnostic criteria they were talking about. So like when they would say like this has to do with ADHD, that's not what the research backs up. So to that point, I was like, what if there was a useful tool that like a book that
Yeah.
people could go to and we have a chapter on ADHD and they could easily in 10 pages or less, because all of the chapters are very brief,
Okay.
they would be able to find out what is it, what's the issue. So whether it's chronic pain, depression, loneliness, panic disorder, ADHD, what is the issue? What does research say are evidence-based treatments? So in very small bite-sized chunks, here's cognitive behavioral therapy. What is it and how could it help? And then what might you do about it? If you're like, I need some help with it right today, we have strategies, again, very bite-sized. There's nothing in the book that's like longer than like 6 sentences for a section. They're very bite-sized sections. The intros are maybe like 12 sentences. And then we have things that might get in the way and a sample case. So here's Jim, and Jim might have ADHD. This is their experience. And then we have what you might say if you're dealing with that issue or if a loved one is dealing with that issue.
Okay.
So sometimes it's hard to find the words, especially related to like grief. Like, what do you say? And so we give you some concrete things to say or to consider asking. And then resources round out every chapter. And each chapter is outlined the same way. So you could open up the book and read one chapter and put it down and come back to it 2 weeks later, read a different chapter that's relevant to you. And I've heard from people that that's what they do. They're like, this is a great reference book that when I'm feeling really depressed on a day, I'll open it and go like, okay, what are the things that might actually help me right now? And you don't have to read 75 pages. You read like 2 and you've got lots of tools. So that is why we wrote the book. It is in, so I would love for people to buy it. I would love for you to review it on Goodreads, Amazon, all those places.
Mm-hmm.
However, I will also say it is in local libraries around the country.
Oh,
So
awesome.
we're this journey. Yeah, right?
That's
I as a
awesome, yeah.
library nerd, I will call you nerd, right?
Yeah.
My co-authors and I were super excited to learn that there is a library journal. I did not know. I did not know that libraries had a journal.
Yeah.
Made a lot of sense after thinking about it.
Yeah.
You either get 0 stars or you get a star. Those are your two options, your book in the library journal. And we got a star, which means that the library journal deemed it to be an essential read that should be in most libraries around the country.
That is
And so and so we want it to be a useful tool, accessible to everyone. So that's about the book. If people wanted to interact with me, I am active on LinkedIn. Just it's my name. Feel free to search me, connect with me. I also, as you talked about earlier, started a YouTube page. It's called Undercomplicated with a wonderful psychologist and coach, Stacey Gedian. And you can also find me on my website, drjulieradico.com. I provide coaching services, therapy services. I also love to speak. And as we talked about, well, like part of my mission is to demystify jargony, complicated things. That's a big part of this book is to we'll name the jargon. We'll go, oh, cognitive distortion. Here's what it actually means. Unhelpful thinking habit. I love to talk to groups and speak. So I am all ears if people want to reach out and say, hey, come talk to our group. We would love to learn about how to manage our unhelpful thoughts or manage anxiety or to build our confidence in the workplace or to better communicate. Tons of different topics I'm open to talking about, but I will leave it there and hope that this has been helpful. And I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, definitely. You as well. And again, I think for those listening, for sure, check her out. It's Radico, Radico.
Yes.
Perfect. So, JulieRadico.com.
Yes.
Right.
DrJulieRadico.com.
Dr. Dr. DR or Dr. spelled out.
DrJulieradico.com.
Perfect. And then are you by chance in like any Instagram or TikTok or anything like that, or just mainly LinkedIn and
Oh,
website?
that's a great question. So I do have a joint Instagram that people can follow. It's called Keep It Simple Psychology.
Okay.
And that I am one of my co-authors, Nicole Halverson, and I, we run that page. We've had that for about 4 years. We do daily posts of where we're simplifying coaching and psychology concepts. So yes, if people wanted to search, and there's like a little underscore between each word, but Keep It Simple Psychology. We would be happy to have you.
Perfect. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Radico. It was a pleasure talking to you. Like I said, I could keep on going for hours and take away most of your day in this kind of conversation, because I definitely believe that there's such a importance, not just across the world, but obviously with our mission is helping HR folks redefine themselves and reignite and find that passion again that we have, and that they got us into our roles. That there's a very basic element of mental health that is a key component to what we need to be able to, where we need to be, so that we can help our employees and our peers be there with us as well. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. And good luck with the book. I expect to hear something from you about that book, because it will be coming published. It will be out, and we look forward to seeing that out there in the universe. So thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond HR podcast. We hope today's episode inspired you to reflect and grow in your own HR journey. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Beyond HR Podcast. If you found value here, share it with your fellow HR professionals. Until next time, keep making an impact on yourself.